this is an ongoing series of talks, and so newcomers may find it difficult to follow. But if you don't understand, do not be frustrated. You have to begin at the beginning, so you can listen to tapes, the first tape, second tape, and so on. I want my students, that is all of you and other people as well, to be well-informed Buddhists. So in order to become a well-informed Buddhist, then it is explained in the commentaries that one should understand the 5 aggregates, 12 sense bases, 18 elements, 4 noble truths, dependent origination, and others. Now, each of these topics needs some lengthy explanation. So please do not hope to understand everything fully. Because as in any branch of knowledge, sometimes in order to understand one thing, you need to have a basic knowledge. So if you do not have the basic knowledge, then you will not understand the other thing. So it is the same with these teachings. We have almost finished the 5 aggregates, unless we want to go into details on the 5th aggregate, which is aggregate of consciousness. And if I go into every detail of the aggregate of consciousness, it would take 2 or 3 talks at least. So I will leave it to you for the detailed study of the aggregate of consciousness. And this sheet is just the general overview of the types of consciousness which comprise the aggregate of consciousness, the 5th aggregate. So there are altogether 89 or 121 types of consciousness in this list. And so they are laid out here for your easy understanding. So the first line is called Lokiya. I use Pali because I want you to learn Pali words. So the first line, Lokiya Ceta, mundane consciousness, and then down here, Lokuttara Ceta, supramundane consciousness. So first the division is into mundane and supramundane. And Lokiya Cetas, or supramundane consciousness, is divided into what? Next line, Kama Vachara Cetas. Cetas pertaining to sensual sphere, Kama Vachara. And then if you read down, you find Rupa Vachara Cetas. Cetas, Rupa Vachara, right? About three groups later. Those pertaining to form sphere. And then the next one, Arupa Vachara Cetas. Consciousness pertaining to formless sphere. So mundane consciousness is divided into, in this sheet, Kama Vachara, Rupa Vachara, and Arupa Vachara. Again, the Kama Vachara Cetas, 54 Kama Vachara Cetas are divided into Akusala Cetas, unwholesome Cetas, Ahetuka Cetas, rootless Cetas, and Kama Vachara Sobhana Cetas. That means beautiful consciousness pertaining to sensual sphere. And then down there we have Lokuttara Cetas, or supramundane Cetas. And the supramundane Cetas are divided into 2 groups. The first is Magga Ceta, path consciousness, P-A-T-H. And the second group is Phala Ceta, fruition consciousness. So Magga is the path, or it is a cause, and Phala Ceta is a fruit of fruition. If you want, you can arrange this diagram into something like you use in companies. That here's a president, and then executives one by one, and then and their subordinates, something like that. So first there is Ceta, right? Yeah. And then here mundane and supramundane. Then mundane, Kamavachara, Rupavachara, Arupavachara, and supramundane, Magga and Phala, and then Kamavachara, again 3 divisions. So if you can write the diagram in that way, I think it's more clearly, you can understand more clearly. But it's up to you. And I'm not going to talk in detail about these types of consciousness. So if you want to understand all these types of consciousness, please read the first chapter in the Manual of Abhidhamma. Could you give me the Manual of Abhidhamma? Right. So this is the book. It's called Manual of Abhidhamma. Without the knowledge of this book, you cannot go into the Abhidhamma literature. So it is like multiplication tables, and then what do you call them? Adding, subtracting, multiplying, division. So this book is like that. Now, I described the 18 Ahituka Cetas last month, right? 18 Ahituka Cetas. Do you still remember them? I hope you do. Because I'm reminding you this because we have to refer to these 18, at least these 18 types of consciousness when we come to the 18 elements. So now the next subject is in this sheet, Dvadasa Ayatanas. The Pali was a Dvadasa Ayatana. This is. Yeah.
In the first one, Dvadasa.
Yes. So we'll talk about this today, and then go to the elements. Dvadasa, yes.
Yeah,
Dvadasa Ayatanas. Dvadasa means 12. So Ayatana means sense bases. They are called sense bases, but we'll come to that later. So let's say 12 sense bases or just 12 bases. So they are called bases because consciousness depends upon them. Without them, consciousness cannot arise. So they are called bases of consciousness. Now, please have this sheet ready, Rupa Khanda. So now let us go through the 12 bases or ayatanas. Now what is number 1? The first is Pali and the next English. Chakku ayatana. Chakku means eye. Ayatana means base. So number 1 is what? Eye base. Number 2, ear base. Number 3, nose base. Number 4, tongue base. Number 5, body base. Number 6, mind base. Now let us find out what eye base is. What is eye base? Eye base is the same as eye sensitivity in this list, number 5. Now eye base or eye sensitivity means the sensitive part in the eye, not the whole eyeball, but a place where the image strikes. So according to medical science, it may be on the retina. Retina is at the back of the eyeball, right? So the image strikes there, and then they said it creates some impulses and then sent through the nerve to the brain. So that sensitive part is called eye sensitivity or eye base. Now the second is ear base. Ear base means ear sensitivity. So something in the ear. Now we call ear drum, right? The inner ear. So that is called eye base. I mean ear base or ear sensitivity. The third is nose base. That is in the other list nose sensitivity. Something in the nose where smell is sensed. And then tongue base. Tongue base is tongue sensitivity. That means sensitive parts in the tongue with which we experience taste. So what do you call them? Taste buds, right? Taste buds in the tongue. And then the body base is body sensitivity. Body sensitivity is in the whole of the body, except at the tip of the hairs and at the tip of the nails. And then sometimes there is something hard here. What do you call that? You can cut it without
word.
Word? Yes, something like that. So except those, the body sensitivity exists all over the body. Now the sixth one, mind base. What is mind base?
Faculty.
No, all these 121. That's called mind base here. That means mind itself is base of another mind. And then next, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Number 7, visible object base. Now that is in the other list, number 10, form. Form here means just the visible object, but it is translated as form here in this sheet. So form means that which can be seen by the eyes. So it is just visible object. Number 8, sound base. So that is number 11 in the other list, sound. You hear some noise or sound, and that is called sound base. And number 9, odor, smell base. And that is the same in the other list, number 12, odor. And number 10 is taste base. That's the same as in 13 in the other list, taste. Sweet, sour, pungent, hot, these are called taste. And then number 11, touch base. That means something that can be touched. And so that is the same as tangibility in the other list. When you feel something, when you touch something, then you have the sense of touch there, and that is called tangibility. And what is tangibility? You remember?
Can be touched. Earth, fire, and air.
Right. Very good. So tangibility means just the earth, fire, and air, right? The three primary elements. When you try to be mindful of touching, you are concentrating on tangibility. Now the last one, we cannot translate this. So Dhamma object base. I've told you repeatedly that the word Dhamma is very difficult to translate, and it means different things in different contexts. So here, Dhamma object means the 52 Cetasikas. You have the notes on 52 Cetasikas? Those in this list, mental factors. I don't know whether you have these sheets with you. So, Dhamma object means these mental factors and the remaining material properties from this list, the remaining material properties, and Nibbana. So please write that down on your sheet. Dhamma object means mental factors, subtle material properties. The others are called subtle material properties, from femininity, masculinity, and so on. So subtle material properties and Nibbana. So these three are called Dhamma here. So Dhamma object base means these three. So now you see that almost all these 12 sense bases are included in the 5 aggregates. Can you see that? All these 12 sense bases are included, or almost all, except Nibbana. So almost all these 12 sense bases are included in the 5 aggregates. So now I will ask you. Now the first base, I base, in which aggregate is it included? I base.
Perception.
Aggregate of matter, right? Rupa. And ear base? Rupa, aggregate of matter. Nose base? Same, aggregate of matter. Tongue base? Aggregate of matter. Body base? Same, aggregate of matter. Mind base?
Consciousness.
Right, number 5. Aggregate of consciousness, right? Now number 7. Visible object base, again aggregate of matter, Rupa. Sound base,
Same.
Rupa, aggregate of matter. Odor base, aggregate of matter. Taste base, aggregate of matter. Touch base, aggregate of matter. Dhamma object base, in different aggregates, right? Now, so in Rupa, right? An aggregate of matter, and then aggregate of feeling, because 52 mental factors comprise aggregate of feeling, aggregate of perception, aggregate of mental formations. So, the 12 Dhamma object base is included in aggregate of matter, aggregate of feeling, aggregate of perception, aggregate of mental formations, in four aggregates, right? So now you see the same thing is given different names, right? So I base is aggregate of matter, or it is I base. Then later on we will come to I element of I. So Buddha taught different people in different ways. So if you are familiar with the teaching of aggregates, then Buddha will say, let's say, this is Rupa aggregate, this is feeling aggregate, and so on. If you are familiar with the 12 bases, then Buddha will say this is I base, ear base, or I base is impermanent, ear base is impermanent, and so on. So Buddha knew what you are familiar with, because he had this ability, say, to penetrate into the minds of his listeners, and so accordingly he taught them. That is why his teachings are very successful, and that is why people, after listening to him, they really understood the Dhamma and then practiced and got enlightenment. So in different ways, Buddha taught different people. Now, next subject, Atharasa Dhatus. Atharasa means 18. Dhatu means element. So 18 elements. The word dhatu in Pali also have many meanings. And the meaning here is something that holds its characteristic. That means that has its own characteristic. Now, let us go through these 18 elements, and you will find that you are familiar with most of them. The first is element of I, or we can say I element. I element is actually the same as what? I base. So it belongs to aggregate of matter. Now, element of ear is the same as what? Ear base, and belongs to aggregate of matter, right? Element of nose is the same as nose base and belongs to aggregate of matter. Aggregate of tongue is the same as tongue base and belongs to aggregate of matter. Yes, very good. Then element of body is the same as body base and belongs to aggregate of matter. Very good. Now, you tell me the rest. Element of visible object is the same as visible object base and belongs to aggregate of matter, because it is visible object matter. Element of sound is the same as sound base and belongs to still aggregate of matter. And then element of taste, element of touch, the same as touch base, taste base, touch base, and belong to aggregate of matter. Now we come to something new. Element of I consciousness. So I consciousness is the same as or included in what base? No. Mind base, number 6. I consciousness, not the I. I consciousness means seeing consciousness, actually. But the name I consciousness is given to it because it depends on the I. So I consciousness really means what? Seeing consciousness. So when you see something, there is a seeing consciousness in your mind. And that seeing consciousness is what is called element of I consciousness here. So in Pali, we do not call it seeing consciousness, but we call it I consciousness. But actually it is seeing consciousness. So I consciousness is included in what base? Mind base. And in what aggregate?
Aggregate of consciousness.
Aggregate of consciousness. Number 5 aggregate. Yes. And then ear consciousness. That means hearing consciousness. So here you hear something and there is hearing consciousness in your mind. So hearing consciousness is included in, again, mind base and in the aggregate of consciousness. Yeah. So nose consciousness, that means consciousness which depends on the nose, or smelling consciousness. Nose consciousness is included in mind base and in aggregate of consciousness. Tongue consciousness, that means tasting consciousness, taste consciousness, is included in mind base and the aggregate of consciousness. Body consciousness, included in mind base. Body consciousness means touch consciousness. So it's included in mind base and aggregate of consciousness. Now, you have here up to now 5 kinds of consciousness: seeing consciousness, hearing consciousness, smelling consciousness, tasting consciousness, touching consciousness. And each of them are divided into 2. Right? When you see something you want to see, you like, or pleasant, that is one type of consciousness. When you see something you don't want to see, something ugly, there is another kind of consciousness, seeing consciousness. So there are 2 kinds of seeing consciousness: seeing pleasant things and seeing unpleasant things. And seeing pleasant things is the result of good karma in the past, because you did something good in the past, and so you see good things here. And seeing ugly things or unpleasant things is the result of bad karma in the past. You did something bad, and so you see ugly things. So when you see something ugly, something unpleasant, something you don't want to see, whom would you blame?
Yes.
You have to blame yourself. Your bad karma in the past, and not the others who show you this side, right? It's very important, because we most of the time we are angry with other persons. Now these are not difficult to understand, these 5 sets of consciousness. But here, element of mind, it's difficult to understand. And then again, element of mind consciousness. Now, when we see something, First, our mind is turned towards the object. Actually, that is before seeing. And then we see the object. After we see the object, we accept the object, or we take the object, we pick up the object. So that is one moment. And after taking or receiving the object, we investigate the object, whether it is a good object or bad object or whatever. So there is an investigating moment. After investigating, we decide that this is the object. This is a desirable object, undesirable object. So there is a determination, moment of determination. After the moment of determination, there is the full experience of the object. And there are 7 moments of them, full experience. After 7 moments of experience, there are 2 aftertaste moments, 2 moments of aftertaste. That is, you eat something and then at the end you swallow some remainder of the food with the saliva. So something like that. So there are 2 moments of aftertaste.